watch and pray. Saturday he told me what to say. Sunday gave me the power divine. I'll let my little light shine. Oh, this little light of mine, Lord, I'm gonna let it shine all in Mississippi.
We present part 5 of This Little Light, a series of documentaries on Mississippi in 1964.
Now, just a few miles outside of Harmony, there was a Madden Clinic, which was built and financed by a Dr. Thagard. And it was a 20-bed clinic. It had 14 beds for whites, 4 beds for Negroes, and 2 beds for Choctaw Indians. And a few of the Negroes in the community had told us that this doctor...
This is John Polcheck, a summer volunteer in Mississippi from Harvard.
I had some blisters on my feet, and so we decided that we would go up to this doctor and see if he would treat us. I was with the minister at the time. It was a student minister from Des Moines, Iowa. And he was a white minister. We did not go there to try and provoke the doctor in any way. We decided we would go in the most inconspicuous way possible. When we drove to the clinic, which was about 2 or 3 minutes away, we stopped and we entered at the white waiting room. The clinic has 2 waiting rooms, a white waiting room at front and a Negro waiting room off to the side, more towards the back. And the doctor came out from behind the counter, and the minister introduced himself and introduced me and told him why we had come. And then the doctor asked us where we were from. And we told him, I'm from Wisconsin, and he was from Iowa. Then he proceeded to ask us where we were living here in Mississippi. And this was his second point of information. He wanted to brand us as nigger lovers, and actually we were living in harmony with those niggers. That is what he told us. Those were his words. And then he turned to the minister and he said, you mean to say you really are a man of God? And he asked that God help him for using God's work in such a way. And the minister said something rather non-committal, like, well, we all have to follow our own convictions. And at this time, the doctor actually struck and pushed the minister backwards into the arms of a rather large gentleman who had circled from in back. And they were humane enough to slip off his glasses. And then they proceeded to beat both of us for several minutes. At this time, somewhere between 5 and 10 men seemed to be coming from all the hallways. Finally, they said, well, you can leave now. Get out of here, scram. And I tried to say, well, that's what we wanted to do. This time, the minister was unconscious and was lying next to the car. I presume they carried him. And so I dragged him into the car, and I took the keys, and I was just about ready to start and to leave when 2 men came in and they grabbed the keys from us, and they told us they were calling the sheriff. A deputy sheriff came. He was rather elderly man and far from being competent, and he handcuffed the 2 of us together and put us into his pickup truck. And he transported us from Madden into the county jail, which was in Carthage, about 10 miles away. At one time, the deputies, as we were being transported from his truck into the car, he pointed to one of us. It was very hard to tell which one, and he said, that's the one I want to kill.
And it won't be wild. I went to the cabin, submit the car. I made a mistake, and missed the style.
John Polcheck was a graduate student at Harvard University when he volunteered to go south to Mississippi to work with the Council of Federated Organizations. When he left Harvard for the summer, his future was assured. He was comfortable. What then brought him south?
Well, I think I'm typical of many students that were down there, and that is that we simply could not stay away. There was something within our consciences or what have you that just drew us to Mississippi.
At the Jackson COFO headquarters, Polcheck was assigned to teach in the Freedom School in Harmony.
I was teaching a combined Negro history and civics course, and I felt that it was very necessary for these children to get a sense of belonging, a sense of history. And so we were teaching this Negro history, and just as an aside, we always, of course, just stayed one lesson ahead of our children. None of us were qualified to teach this type of course. And I also felt that they were to get an idea of the movement, of the civil rights movement in this country. They would have to have a foundation of the basic setup of our federal government and of the Bill of Rights. So I spent a considerable amount of time with the United States Constitution.
It was a regular 9 to 3 freedom school then, 5 days a week?
No, our class just met in the mornings. We arrived and we met in one of the churches and we sang freedom songs. And then we moved out under the trees when it was not raining. And they were just informal classes. The children would sit on orange crates, this type of thing, or sometimes directly onto the ground.
The establishment of freedom schools at more than 40 places throughout Mississippi, despite the original lack of facilities and books, and the presence of open hostility from the Mississippi authorities, is one of the most impressive parts of the Mississippi Summer Project. Staunton Lynd, an educator from a southern university, was largely responsible for the concept and realization of the Freedom School program. Here, before the summer gets underway, he discusses some of his plans.
There will be 20 freedom schools in communities throughout the state for 10th and 11th grade high school youngsters, attempting to train them as the citizenship leaders of tomorrow to take over this movement that has already been begun. In addition to citizenship training, we will have, of course, remedial academic training. The school system in Mississippi, particularly for Negroes, is woefully inadequate. So we'll be doing these two things. On the one hand, academic work. On the other hand, citizenship training related to the ongoing registration drive.
Mm-hmm. How many students from around the country are coming down to work with you?
Well, in the summer project as a whole, there was a talk in January, February of 1,000 students coming. And I recall Claude Sitton of the New York Times said that even if 100 came, it would be spectacular. Actually, as of a week ago, we had over 900 accepted applications. There will be 1,000 students coming to Mississippi as volunteers this summer, and approximately 300 of them will teach in freedom schools.
How many students do you think you'll be able to enroll?
You mean how many of the Mississippi high school students?
Yes.
I would estimate between 1,000 and 1,500. It's a little hard to say now. When I was in Jackson a month ago, I read through about 100 applications which had come in by that time, and I know that by now there are many hundreds.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I took a look at the syllabus, the history syllabus, which is going to be offered in the afternoon sessions. Is that right? The morning will be devoted to remedial activities, and the afternoon to history and current events?
Well, as a matter of fact, we're going to have a very progressive approach to education. Each school will be encouraged to develop its own curriculum, and the material that we supply to teachers will be only in the way of a guide. But we are suggesting, as something that the staff of each school might want to consider, that the morning begin with rather conventional academic work, tutoring in math and English and so forth and so on. That the second half of the morning, if it seems right to a particular school, be devoted to the citizenship studies, which I mentioned earlier, and that then in the afternoon, when it gets very hot in Mississippi, the students have less concentrated activities of a cultural and recreational sort.
No, I was saying that I noted the history syllabus, and I was very impressed by the amount of teaching in Negro history that's going to go on. As a matter of fact, it's much more than in most schools and colleges that I've seen. Now, along with this syllabus in history and along with the theater, what do both of these combined what's the intent of this? What do you hope that this will bring out in the student? This awareness of Negro history and his role in American culture.
Of course, I think you asked just the right question, because what we want most of all is to encourage the young person growing up in Mississippi to feel that he can affect what happens to him. That life is not just a play that has been written in advance for him, that he has to act a menial and depressing part in, but that he can affect his own destiny. And we feel that it's more important to create an atmosphere, a community in these schools in which students can determine the direction of their own studies, in which they can ask questions, in which they can challenge authority. We feel it's more important to create this kind of atmosphere than to communicate any particular subject matter. Now, the way Negro history fits into that is that Negro students in the South, of course, are taught from textbooks which present very little Negro history. And they are given the image of Africa as an altogether savage and uncivilized part of the world, of slavery as something which the American Negro passively acquiesced in, of the Southern Negro as an inherently unpolitical kind of being. They're given all these stereotypes in the conventional education which they get. And we feel that it's important in freedom school education for these Negro high school students to realize that there have been great African contributions to civilization, to realize that the slaves did resist slavery, to realize that in the Reconstruction period, for example, there were 2 Negro senators, both from the state of Mississippi. And we feel that this is an example of presenting a kind of factual material which can strengthen the student's sense of confidence, strengthen his sense of identity, make him more adventurous in trying to change the society he lives in.
Angie what?
Williams.
Where do you live?
I live in Valley View.
You live in Valley View? Mm-hmm. And what do you think of Freedom School?
I like it. I enjoy coming.
Why?
Well, I learned French, and we don't have French at school.
What's your name?
Angie.
Angie what?
Nichols.
Which do you like better, Freedom School or the school in the winter?
I like Freedom School the best.
Why?
Well, for one reason, at Freedom School, we don't have to have tests and things like that. And we can learn foreign language out here, and we don't have that in our schools.
What else do you learn in Freedom School?
They teach Negro history.
What's your name?
Josephine Hamlin.
That's right. And you also are learning about Negro history in Freedom School.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us why? Why is it that there's no longer any slavery?
Because it was, I think it was the 14th Amendment to abolish slave.
That was a long time ago. Do you remember about when?
It was when Abraham Lincoln was president.
And what happened when they abolished slavery? What did the people in the South? What did the white people in the South do?
I think some of the white people in the South, they wasn't too much for abolishing slavery because most of them had large farms and things, and they needed slaves to work their farms and things like that.
What other things other than about slavery? Have you learned anything else about Negro history yet?
Negro had a great part in different things. Negro had a great part in things, but they never did mention it in the books because we never studied Negro history. We haven't learned much about, some of the Negro. I know that was the first Negro lieutenant governor. His name was A.K. Davis. We never studied that in the book. He was a Negro lieutenant governor.
Where do Negroes come from? Did they come originally from this country? Did they come from another country?
I think some come from other countries, some still here.
You remember what country they came from? Where they came from? Does anybody remember where they came from?
Africa is a place for slaves there. And
Are there still slaves in Africa?
I don't know. I know that they had them under slavery. The master, a master was colored, and they turned them over and they carried them back to
To where?
To an American, and have them slave to work sugar cane and tobacco plantation.
How old are you?
12.
The freedom schools were set up in churches, in fields of hay, in Kofo freedom houses. The response was overwhelming wherever I was in the state. And typical of the remarks of freedom school teachers are those of Sarah Liebler's, a public school teacher from Los Angeles teaching near Canton.
I'm teaching at a freedom school that's held in a church, a little one-room church out in the country. We have 40 to 50 students ranging in age from 7 to over 20. And we teach all kinds of subjects: French, typing, arithmetic, English skills, and most important, citizenship and Negro history. Since this is the first time we've had freedom schools, things were, of course, slightly disorganized. And now as I look at it, we could have done things a different way that would have been better. For example, originally the freedom schools were intended for 11th and 12th grade students. Well, they told us in our rural district, you'll never get enough 11th and 12th graders. So we said, okay, 12 to 20. Then this one has a brother. He's 11. Can he bring him? And my sister's 10. Can she come? And we end up with a lot of babies from 7 to 11. Many of them, however, are very serious-minded and very concerned with the learning. If I had it to do all over again, I'd start with the 11th and 12th graders, and then if we didn't have enough, we'd open it up. I think it's more important for them because so many of them will be out of school pretty soon. And, of course, the Mississippi school system is not as, should I say, advanced, and the rural schools are particularly at a disadvantage. For example, at the rural high school that many of our kids attend, there is no foreign language offered. I believe that science is extremely limited. These are important subjects, particularly when you consider that the majority of these young people are not going to stay in Mississippi. The trend has been to move north. And when they get up there, they're not really prepared for anything except picking cotton, and there's very little cotton grown in Chicago.
Tell me your name.
Weldon Davis.
And what are you a student at Freedom School?
Yes.
What are you learning in Freedom School?
Well, I'm learning a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything? What do you do in the winter?
Go to county school.
You go to county school? Which do you like better?
I like Freedom School better.
Why?
Well, you learn more, and over there they be saying a lot but don't be getting anywhere. And over here they explains it and tell what it's about and everything.
What kinds of things are you learning?
Well, I'm taking French, and
Say something in French.
Il pleut maintenant. It's raining now.
Do you go to school in the winter?
Sometimes.
What grade you in?
8.
And what kind of things do you learn there?
I learn just about a little everything. What I mean that I study, arithmetic, science, it helped.
Do you learn about Negro history in school in the winter?
No.
Do you learn anything about the movement?
No.
Do you learn anything about the Negro at all in school in the winter?
What's that?
Do you learn anything about the Negro in school in the winter?
No.
Do the kids ask questions about it?
No.
Yes, well.
Yeah. Oh, man.
What's going on is
They ask me now. Until my day I done at school about it. What I mean, they have to streak somewhere.
Are the teachers afraid of the movement?
Yeah.
Why do you think they're afraid?
Probably losing their job, all I can say.
What do you think of the schools here when you went?
Well, when I think about the schools, I think the schools are very poor because the Negro in Negro school practically that they don't have things that they should work well. What I mean, they don't have proper books. Probably half of the books have the leaves torn out of it, and a Negro can't get too good an education in a school like that. What I feel like that when a Negro, when he really need education, what I mean, he should have proper things to use, such as the lab. Take it for instance, the school that I attended this year. In the lab area, that we didn't have anything to work with. And so that's what we missed out. A whole lot of things that we should have known. We didn't have no test tubes. We didn't have things like that. And so I think the schools in Mississippi are very poor for Negroes. What I mean, white schools are much better. What I mean, the whites, they use the things that Negroes get to their school, what they get in school. When the white folks get through with it, they bring it out to the Negro. And what I mean, it's already torn up. And so for practically a week or two that his is broken or torn up, and so they blame it to the Negro. So the Negro can't take care of anything. He don't need nothing. He don't want know nothing. But the way that I feel that in each man or each school should be justified to sing.
With my high school, it's a new school. It's maybe about 2.5 years old, or maybe 3 years, and the government built our high school. But that's all true. It's just a government-built high school with no kind of facilities in it. So therefore, it's just a building, and that's mostly all to it, just a building, and we have to make out with what we have.
In my high school, like his, it's relatively new, but like his also, it is sort of under-equipped. It's a big, beautiful building, you know, but like I say, it's under-equipped. There are a lot of facilities that are needed, and to show you how things are, it's only 5 years old, and it is already overcrowded. See, the building was originally built for about 1,400 to 1,700 students, I believe. The capacity that it could be enlarged to was 1,700 students, whereas this past year we had over 2,200 students.
There are lots of things that we need, and we need more teachers, and lots of the teachers are young and haven't been to graduate school, and some of them barely know more than the students.
The facilities in our school are very limited. We have a science department, but no experiments are ever carried on. The library isn't as adequate as it should be, and we don't have a literature department at all. No books to read whatsoever.
We have, as I said, we have our building about 3 years old. We have this very large library, and just a very small amount of books, and therefore we weren't made to read books or told to read a certain number of books. The library was just there.
Authors like James Baldwin, I had never heard of him, even though I had of Paul Dunbar and James Weldon Johnson and some of the older poets and all the English writers. I've heard of them, but the modern authors, they didn't stress that too much.
One other thing is that teachers in my high school tend to shy away from books that are controversial. It is that books that aren't exactly recommended by people in higher positions. Well, they aren't put in the library. And the type of books they have you read are things that you really don't enjoy. I mean, they are all right too, but things that you'd be interested in, they don't require you to read them. They like for you to do mostly classical stuff, you know.
Would controversial include in Mississippi the racial question?
Yes, I believe it would. I mean, that's basically the whole problem, you know.
Our librarian has asked for some of these books, but maybe the superintendent or our counter, whoever's over, them won't give them the books.
That's where it was in our school when the librarian made out an order and it had to be approved that there were no controversial books there for you to read.
In our high school, we would have the superintendent of education to come around, and it would be on the spur of the moment. You didn't know when he was going to come. And if you were talking about the racial question, when he arrived, then you had better stop, because it was a possibility that the teacher would be fired, and you would know exactly what had happened. I remember in elementary school and in grammar school, the Negro in our high school was taught to be inferior. The teachers had to teach this.
I know an instance when we had to write an editorial to, a make-believe editorial to a newspaper saying "Dear Editor" and all like that. And one of the students in my class was asking the simple question that, why do you treat me differently because my skin is a shade darker than yours? And this teacher got violently mad and told him don't ever do anything like that in class again. And so from then on, we all knew better than to even bring up the race situation because she knew the dangers, and I guess we didn't then.
We were trying to figure out what a convention does. Did you see that on television?
I didn't see them picking them, but it was they laid down on the floor and wouldn't get up. They had to carry them out on stretch.
Okay, the candidate makes a speech at the convention. Now, when the candidate runs for office for president, he has to have some kind of program, right? He has to say, I'm going to do this in this such and such a place, and I'm going to give the farmers this, and I'm going to give the businessman this, and I'm going to do this in Cuba and that in Vietnam, and I'm going to look so-and-so in the eye over here and talk back to someone else, right?
This freedom school was outside a church, under the shade of 3 trees, and crickets and birds accompanied the lesson. The sun was bright, the air dry, and the road to the church was as usual dusty. The lesson dealt with politics and the methods by which political parties adopt their programs. This discussion was standard throughout the 40 freedom schools, for as Staunton Lynd said, the schools, in part, would help develop an organic sense of the working of democracy. As a result of such discussions, each group of students outlined a political program for the state of Mississippi and elected delegates to a statewide Freedom School Conference held in Meridian at the end of the summer.
What would you like to see the Democrats do?
Give the Negroes that all the American citizens have a chance to, no matter what color they are, a chance to get a good job and provide better education.
Would you describe exactly what the purpose of this convention is and what you hope to accomplish by it?
Well, you see, we feel that what democracy means is ordinary people deciding what they want to accomplish and then electing delegates to accomplish those purposes. Democracy, to our mind, doesn't mean just electing people. It means electing people to carry out a program. So what we've been doing in the Freedom Schools the last few weeks is asking each group of youngsters to imagine that Negroes in Mississippi had the vote, that they could elect the mayor of the town that they live in, that they could send legislators to the Mississippi legislature, that, as in Reconstruction days, a Negro senator could once again go up from Mississippi to Washington. And then we put the question in each school, all right, if this were the case, if you had representatives, what would you want those representatives to do? And so in each school, a program of demands has been drawn up. And what we're doing in the workshops at the convention here is to try to put together the programs brought from all over the state into one program.
The Freedom Schools, as I understand it, were initially intended to last just for the summer. Are there any plans to continue the Freedom Schools after the summer project ends? And if so, how many of the schools do you think will be continued?
We have found that the Freedom Schools were so successful this summer that we feel a commitment to carrying them on this winter, not only from the standpoint of success, but also because there is a widespread apprehension among Negroes in the various communities where we have schools that when the summer volunteers leave, the white community will retaliate against the families who've had volunteers in their homes, against the schools. So what we have now committed ourselves to is continuing Freedom School instruction, not necessarily in every single one of the 50 schools that are now operating, but at least in every one of the project areas where there is a school. For example, in Hattiesburg, where we have 6 schools, there will be at least one program of evening instruction and probably more this winter. This is the form in which the continued Freedom School program will take. Next summer, we hope to have Freedom Schools on a bigger and better scale, possibly throughout the whole southern Black Belt.
The Freedom School program had an almost immediate impact on Mississippi and on the minds of young Negroes who were exposed to the techniques and facts that it made available. Some striking results of the program took place that same summer, when students at one high school called a school boycott that we will look at more closely in another program.
This has been Part 5 of This Little Light, a series of documentaries on Mississippi in 1964. The programs were produced from field recordings made in Mississippi by Chris Koch, Dale Miner, and Dave Welch. The interview with John Polcheck was conducted by Frank Haber. Music for this program was made available by Folkways Records. Production assistants were Kathy Dopkin and Willie Ross. The program was written and produced by Chris Koch for Pacifica Radio.